Hi, I'm Barbara Carpenter.
Hello, I'm John Sablon. Welcome to Around and About.
I was a town council member in the town of West Hartford and a retired public school teacher. Being retired leaves me more time for running, but I don't run in the streets of West Hartford anymore because they are just too dangerous.
I used to be a TV news reporter, and at one time I was a runner. Well, a jogger. Now I strictly walk, and you know, West Hartford is really good for walking. The one thing that I've learned through walking, however, is the peril that pedestrians can meet at any intersection.
The danger, of course, is being struck by a motor vehicle and being badly hurt or killed. Often, it's due to a motorist being distracted by cell phones or passengers.
Or it can be a case of impatient drivers, in a hurry, ignoring traffic lights and signs, like the pedestrian walk sign. Let's just watch for a while. You saw it. In just 4 seconds, 2 vehicles made right turns at Mountain Road and Farmington Avenue while the walk sign was on. Authorities have become aware of these problems. Mounting accident numbers have made it quite clear.
Town Manager Rick Ledwith.
In 2022, we had an exceptionally dangerous year on our streets where 6 individuals, as a result of traffic accidents, were killed on our streets. So in June of 2022, right here at Unity Green, we had an individual who was struck and killed by a car, pedestrian. And then in December, the week before Christmas, we had a woman on Boulevard who was crossing the street, going to do her shopping around 5 o'clock at night, and was struck and killed by a car. That car took off. We still haven't found the driver of that car. And 2 nights later, we had an individual on the other side of town, landscaper, who was helping his partner back his truck out of the driveway, and that individual was struck and killed by a driver that evening. So, and then on Christmas morning, about 10:07 in the morning, we had a head-on collision on Simsbury Road where 3 individuals lost their lives on our street. So, and I'll never forget that day, our mayor calling, it was Christmas Day, and we're talking on the phone, and she's this, said this has to end. We have to do something to make our streets safer.
Seeking a solution, Mayor Sherry Cantor introduced a concept called Vision Zero.
I appreciate your being part of the process to learn about what Vision Zero is, what the task force is doing, and ultimately what the town will do to make our roads safer for all users. It is really important. It is a quality of life issue. It is an everyday public safety issue.
Residents and town experts were selected to form a task force in about 2 weeks.
And we've been working hard ever since in developing an action plan that essentially will eliminate all traffic-related deaths and serious injuries within 10 years.
The mayor knows full well that drivers can act dangerously. She's seen it.
I actually on my way here today to see you. It's 30 degrees outside, and there was a cyclist on the road, and there was a bus that had a stop sign on. I saw a car go way too close to the cyclist, and I also saw a car drive right through where the bus had its stop sign on. That was just my 5 minutes on the way here.
A school bus
that had the stop sign on for a student that was leaving the bus at the end of a school day.
She's an avid runner, and she knows firsthand what runners can encounter. She recounted for me one of her close calls.
I was running, and a car took a right on red and almost hit me, and didn't see I had the right of way.
It goes without saying that people on foot and cyclists should be very cautious at street corners, always.
This is the intersection of Mountain Road and Farmington Avenue here in West Hartford, not far from Stop and Shop. People around here know full well that this intersection can be dangerous for pedestrians.
Very dangerous intersection.
Why is that?
I cross it every day, and just about every day I feel like I'm taking my life in my hands.
Why is that?
Well, It's extremely busy here. Even when you cross with a light, people are very eager to make a right on red right over here. So what's happening is they're looking at the traffic on their left while at the same time turning into their right, possibly into a pedestrian.
Yeah.
So it's the pedestrians who have to watch out for the drivers, not the other way around.
Let me give you a case in point. On Friday, November 3rd of this year, at 6:47 in the morning, two walkers narrowly escaped serious injury, or worse, when two drivers made illegal right turns from Mountain onto Farmington. All the while, the pedestrian walk sign was indicating that it was safe to walk. This is the very spot where that incident took place. You're probably wondering how I know all of this. Well, my wife and I were those two walkers, and I can tell you I just barely managed to pull her out of the path of that car. I cannot overstate to you how shaken we were after that incident. All the more because each of us was wearing a light like this to prevent that kind of thing from happening. A few months later, educator David Hill had a frightening incident at the same corner, Farmington and Mountain, as he and his dog tried to cross the street with the walk signal in broad daylight.
And we were about halfway across the road when an MDC truck just came barreling through the red light and almost hit us.
Making a left turn.
Making a left-hand turn on the red, yeah.
I can say that because I saw it happen. I was standing just about where we are now, a few feet away from where we are now, looking across the street, and about to wave to you when we saw that pickup truck almost hit you.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Well, you probably heard me. I uttered some profanities I probably shouldn't have, but it was scary because it was so late after the red that I was shocked that a car was still trying to make that turn at that point in time. We were well across the street at that point, and there was no place to go. And when you've got a dog with you, you can't really turn back very rapidly, and kind of accelerating ahead was going to be a problem as well.
I knew how Hill felt, since a few hours earlier on that day, I just managed to leap out of the path of a car similarly blowing through a red light on Farmington to make a left turn on Mountain Road. And yes, I was wearing a light.
I think almost everyone I see in the morning is wearing lights or reflective gear or something that's it's pretty easy to see them. I'm not sure that if drivers are paying attention to that, or if they're just so focused on getting to where they need to go in a hurry because they're running late. Or I've said to you, I'm not sure that people think they're being watched, or there's any accountability in the morning. You know, it's been an issue a lot in the last couple of years. I've lived in this area over 40 years and made this crossing at Farmington and Mountain Road hundreds, if not thousands of times, and people just seem to be driving a lot more crazily than they have in the past.
Cherry Cantor doesn't look at this situation solely as the mayor. She says for her, it's personal.
I have 4 generations of family members that are here. My mother, myself, my son, my granddaughter. Very precious cargo. And honestly, it is the most important thing, the safety of the community. And we all need our roads, sidewalks, crosswalks to live our lives, walking to school, whatever those things are. And this is, it always hits somebody very, very hard when an accident happens.
Oh, here we go.
You just dust him off. He's been sitting on the side.
Well-known artist Stephanie Marco's life was turned upside down by an accident in 2017. She, her husband, 2 children, and the family dog were enjoying a carefree vacation day.
It was a nice, warm spring day. The kids were off from school for the week, and we thought we'd walk into West Hartford Center. We had a nice lunch. We were having a great time, laughing and heading home.
They crossed the intersection of Farmington Avenue and Troutbrook Drive, Stephanie bringing up the rear. She spotted a speeding car on Farmington, hurtling towards her.
About halfway across the intersections, the kids would, race each other across. And so they were all the way across the intersection, and my husband, Carl, was like 2 feet ahead of me. with our dog, and I was, the last person crossing. And I looked up towards Hartford on Farmington, and there was a red light, and I saw this car coming very fast towards me. And I'm like, how are they going to stop if they're coming that fast? And I had this moment of like, what's going on? And then I quickly realized he was not stopping at the light at all. And then the last thought I had was, I'm going to die right now. And then I thought, I'm not ready to die. And then everything just went black.
Standing there 2 feet in front of Stephanie when that man blew through the intersection and hit her, I literally thought I just watched my wife die.
This is what the vehicle looked like after the collision. An unconscious Stephanie was rushed to the hospital with multiple injuries.
I woke up in the ER, and Carl and the kids came in and saw me, and that was a joyful moment for me to realize that I was still here on this earth. And then things happened quickly because I realized after the joy of seeing them, I'm in a lot of pain. I fractured my C5 and C6, and broke my wrist, and basically about half of my face got, taken off on the asphalt.
Stephanie had to make dozens of visits to specialists treating her for spinal and arm injuries. She needed occupational and physical therapy for some 6 months. The family needed several family therapy sessions to help them deal with what had happened. Years later, the physical injuries have healed. Stephanie is again pouring herself into her art. She says, though, that she's not all the way back to where she was before that awful day.
I think we're still recovering from it. I mean, I think the physical wounds were months for Stephanie, but the emotional wounds are there forever.
It lingers with you, too. And in addition to that, I have terrible sleep problems now as well.
In general,
Yeah, I never had sleep problems before this happened.
Kelly Hammond Book can probably relate to Stephanie's plight. While crossing South Main Street in a crosswalk near the library a year ago, Kelly was hit by a car and severely injured.
My name is Kelly Hammond Book. I live at 95 Maplewood Lane. I was the pedestrian who was hit on Main Street on December 17th. I spent 15 days in the hospital. I had suffered 2 broken legs, 2 broken cervical vertebrae that have been fused, 2 surgeries on my right leg, which may or may not be usable in the future, spinal nerve injuries, traumatic brain injury. While my injuries might not have been life-threatening, they're definitely life-altering. And I think that it's really important to recognize that we live in a town right now where people don't feel safe.
Her testimony before the town council is said to be a key factor in the decision to launch Vision Zero.
In doing its job, the Vision Zero Task Force has come up with an action plan proposal that will be presented to a town council subcommittee around mid-January. The voluminous plan has a lot of maps, graphs, data. It cites the need for workshop and study. Some critics say that doesn't go far enough.
A lot of the education goals and the awareness goals have to do with meeting indoors for workshops to discuss safety, to look at maps. You really can't get a sense of how unsafe the streets are by looking at a map. You can't get a sense of types of things that walkers and cyclists will run into on a daily basis by discussing it. It's much more an experience thing.
I ran that criticism by task force member Dwayne Martin and asked him when the plan would result in action.
It's difficult for me to say precisely when it will happen, but I understand and I agree with the comments from people that say we haven't done enough and we haven't really produced anything, and a plan is just a plan. When are we going to see some action? It's called an action plan for a reason. Part of the challenge that we have, and to your point, is there's a lot of information for the town to go through and use, putting this forward to actually materialize into some measurable change. We have a lot of projects ongoing and only so much staff and only so much resources. So I'm making the request to increase our resources to be able to handle this. But that doesn't mean we should ignore the problems that we have and not try. So a plan is a plan, but you put the effort in, and it's not going to get worse. It's going to get better.
More ambitious projects, though, are going to depend on the towns being able to secure major funding. Martin pointed out that there are smaller, lower-cost moves that can be made to ease the situation. Calming the traffic is the term he used. For instance, the placement of cones on Woodrow Street to slow traffic at an intersection, aiming to cut down on crashes in that area.
We can do things that are not very expensive to engineer. So I'm hoping that we have a number of those kinds of projects that are not millions of dollars in design and construction, but the things that are, you know, $30, $40, $50, $100,000 that we can start to chip away at.
There's talk of eliminating right turn on red. What about that?
We will look at that. There is a negative consequence to the elimination of allowing right turn on red. Once you start to eliminate right turns on red, if the traffic backs up enough, it might tempt motorists to start shortcutting an intersection and go cut through a neighborhood. Now, that's not to say that we're not going to look at eliminating the right turn on red. There may definitely be a reason to do that.
The mayor shared with us a bit of her wish list.
There are things that we can do tomorrow, next week, in a month.
Name some.
I hope speed humps on on Boulevard, on Fern Street. Those are two streets very close to schools, Whiting Lane and Morley School. Drivers on those streets, it's a very straight road, it's a wide road, those are wide roads. Drivers drive too fast. There's also some hills, so there's reduced visibility. So those two things, I hope, are on a very, very short list. If I don't see them, I'm going to ask why.
What's the one thing that you'd ask motorists to keep in mind?
Pay attention. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. There are so many I feel like these days everybody is the distracted driving, the, you know, texting or looking at your phone, but it's not just that. It can be anything.
Well, going from 20 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour, the chance of killing a pedestrian is about, I think, 5 times as higher. So I think it's really important that motorists understand that their speed as they pass pedestrians and cyclists is impactful.
Think about what you would do if you were on the street, if you were a pedestrian that was crossing with your child, by yourself, with a pet. Think about how you would feel, because wherever you need to go, it's not that important that you're going to put somebody else's life in danger.
Pay attention to your surroundings. And that's a general statement, but that could be a pedestrian, a bicyclist, or just the traffic control.
A stop sign, you should really come to a full stop, a red light. I mean, I can understand when the light turns yellow and you are going through it and it might turn red right as you're clearing it. But if the light is red, don't go through it.
Don't rush, because if something happens, it will take you a lot longer in the long run, and you've changed someone's life.
The full scope of Vision Zero will be presented to town government on January 17th. Stay tuned.
Now remember, this is a work in progress. It's not a finalized thing. There's more to be done. In the meantime, remember that this is all about safety, yours and ours. So be careful out there. Watch your step. We'll see you next time on Around and About.